Just to explain, this is the Shakespeare Theater in D.C. Recently, Robert and I were there in front of about 800 folks, just trying out some material for the show.
Beginning with this story, which comes from Plato, actually by way of Aristophanes. It's a 2,400-year-old story.
Breaking news, in other words.
Yeah, and it goes like this.
Once upon a time, he says, people were not born separate from each other. They were born entwined, kind of coupled with each other. So there were boys attached to boys, and there were girls attached to girls, and of course, boys and girls together, in a wonderfully intimate ball. And back then we had 8 limbs. There were 4 on top, 4 on the bottom, and you didn't have to walk if you didn't want to. You could roll, and roll we did. We rolled backwards and we rolled forwards, achieving fantastic speeds that gave us a kind of courage. And then the courage swelled to pride, and the pride became arrogance. And then we decided that we were greater than the gods, and we tried to roll up to heaven and take over heaven, and the gods' alarm struck back, and Zeus, in his fury, hurled down lightning bolts and struck everyone in 2, into perfect halves. So all of a sudden, couples who'd been warm and tight and wedged together were now detached and alone and lost and desperate and losing the will to live. And the gods, seeing what they'd done, worried that humans might not survive or even multiply again, and of course they needed humans to give sacrifices and to pay attention to them, so the gods decided on a few repairs. Instead of heads facing backwards or out, they would rotate our heads back forward. They pulled our skin taut and knotted it right here at the belly button. Genitalia, too, were moved to the front, so if we wanted to, we could. And most important, they left us with a memory. It was a longing for that original other half of ourselves, the boy or the girl who used to make us whole. And that longing is still so deep in all of us, men for men, women for women, men for women, for each other, that it has been the lot of humans ever since to travel the world looking for our other half. And when, says Aristophanes, when one of us meets another, we recognize each other right away. We just know this. We're lost in an amazement of love and friendship and intimacy. We won't get out of each other's sight, even for a moment. These are people, he says, who pass their whole lives together, and yet if you ask them, they could not explain what they desire of each other. They just do.
Very nice.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So here's the thing. That story got us started on a little journey. It truly began just thinking about wholeness and oneness and halves looking for each other.
In all varieties of ways.
Mirrors and shapes.
Relationships, beauty.
The birth of the universe. The nature of life.
All of these things either have a simple, deep beauty
or not. I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
This is RadioLab, and today, for this hour, we are desperately seeking symmetry. By the way, that was Zoe Keating on cello. We'll hear more from her throughout the hour, because she's awesome. Chirality, take 30.
1,000.
Yeah, I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
This is RadioLab, and today we are desperately seeking symmetry.
And thus far we are failing
Desperately.
because maybe if we rejiggered our whole approach, because symmetry, is really about
Love.
No, it's it's
What?
No, we're changing the subject now. It's about the way things look when they're flipped around or turned or rotated, and this is where it gets really interesting. Reflected.
Reflected.
Yes, reflected, because there was a
Reflected.
Yes, there was a mathematician at Oxford University named Charles Lutwidge Dodson.
There's a mathy name for you.
Well, he had a different name, as it happens.
What?
Lewis Carroll.
Oh, like the Alice in Wonderland dude?
The Alice in Wonderland dude,
He
yes.
was a mathematician.
He was.
I really didn't know that.
Did you know that he wrote another book called Through the Looking Glass?
Truthfully, I didn't know they were different books.
You know very little in this particular section of our
I
program.
really don't.
But there's a part of the book where Alice is standing in her room talking to her cat.
Now, if you'll only attend, Kitty, and not talk so much, I'll tell you all about my ideas about Looking Glass House.
This is Natasha Gostwick reading, and in this section of the book, Alice is telling her cat, let's take a look at the difference between our world and that world right there in the mirror.
That's just the same as our drawing room, only the things go the other way. The books are something like our books, only the words go the wrong way. I know that because I've held up one of our books to the glass, and then they hold up one in the other room. How would you like to live in a looking glass house, Kitty? I wonder if they give you milk in there. Perhaps looking glass milk isn't good to drink.
Perhaps mirror milk isn't good to drink, she says.
Why are you talking like that? What does that even mean?
Well, if you just stick with me on this, I think I will make it perfectly clear.
Okay.
This is a very, as it turns out, difficult scientific question.
Yes, they call it a chirality.
Okay, what?
Shh, this is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil, Neil, deGrasse, small d-e, capital G-R-A-S-S-E, Tyson.
He's an astrophysicist with the American Museum of Natural History.
Also the director of the Hayden Planetarium.
Cool.
And what is it? What is chirality?
Well, it's when you make a molecule, there's no rule or law that says it has to be symmetric.
Neil says if you zoom into that bowl of milk, what you're going to find is just chains of atoms that are stuck together in a very particular shape.
And that shape, it could curl in a particular way. So, for example, if you have a spring and you turn your finger in the direction the spring
This is a spring like a coil.
A coil, but like the spring out of your click pen. Pull out that spring.
All right, we have a pen right here.
Under your pen. Pull it out.
I got the spring out. Here we go.
And look at the way the spring turns.
Looking at the spring.
And move your finger in the direction it turns.
And moving my finger. It's turning clockwise. Clockwise. All the way up to the top.
Okay. That spring is that way in its life.
Whether it's right side up or upside down.
Doesn't matter.
Always clockwise.
But if you had a mirror, Jad, do you happen to have something?
Do I have a mirror? No.
Or take your phone, which has a reflected shiny thing.
Okay.
Put your spring in front of the shiny surface of the phone.
Okay, put it in
Trace the
front.
spring with your finger and tell me which direction is your finger going.
Clockwise.
No.
We already did this.
In the reflection.
Oh, in the phone. It's kind of hard to tell, but in the phone. It's going the opposite way.
Yes.
Counterclockwise.
Exactly. And so now you have two oppositely turned springs. You cannot turn one into the other. They're built differently, yet they are curiously identical.
Yeah.
So, since molecules are just sequences of atoms, imagine a molecule that has that shape.
If you put that molecule in front of a mirror, just the same as the spring, you've got now two molecules built differently, but curiously identical. Kind of like your right hand and your left hand.
Your left hand and your right hand are related by a mirror image. It's the same thing with these molecules.
This is Marcelo Gleiser. He's a physicist
At Dartmouth College.
And according to Marcelo, this is how scientists talk about molecules.
So
they call them
the term
righties,
that
they
we
call them
use,
lefties.
Sometimes we call it handedness. Sometimes we get a little more fancy and we call it chirality because kairos in Greek means hand.
And Marcelo says if you look at pebbles or granite or cement, inanimate stuff, when you look at the shape of things inside, it's a mixture of the two.
50% left-handed, 50% right-handed.
However,
If you look at all the proteins of living things, they're always left-handed and no right-handed at all.
Really?
Life has chosen one over the other. Life as we know it has
You
chosen.
mean when scientists look inside of living things, they always see it, the molecules are pointing one way?
Yeah.
Right. So somehow, and this is what's really amazing, somehow life is choosing a very specific shape for the molecules to make up stuff.
That's correct.
when you say life has chosen, let's take that sentence apart. Life meaning everything that we know of on Earth, every living thing,
Hence my phrase, life as we know it.
everything.
That's what that means.
The littlest things to the blue whale.
That would be as we know it.
The littlest, teeniest thing to the tree, the biggest tree, the giant sequoia.
That would be as we know it.
Every protein in you, dogs, trees, you name it.
Is filled with left-handed building blocks?
Yes. It's called the chirality of life.
The chirality of life. Life, my friend, is left-handed.
That's pretty... That's, well, it feels cool, but let me just, like, so what? I mean, I don't want to put it bluntly, but I mean, like,
Well, other than the sheer surprise of having everything in life being shaped in
no,
one
it
direction.
is surprising, but I mean, what does it have to do with my life?
Well,
anyone's life.
This brings
or the
us
mirror
back.
thing.
This brings us back to the mirror mystery in Alice and the Mirror Milk.
No, because you just told me that the milk is left-handed because milk is an organic
From a living
thing.
cow, yeah.
Remember you said that?
Mm-hmm.
Life is lefty. Mm-hmm. So there can't be any right-handed milk, so the mirror milk doesn't exist.
Well, that's because I forgot to tell you that scientists all the time manufacture mirror molecules.
They do?
Yeah, they go into their laboratories and they synthetically make mirror molecules of all kinds of things.
Can they do milk? Mirror
I don't
milk?
know about milk in particular, but I do know that when I talked to an Oxford professor, Marcus de Satoy,
Yeah.
he told me,
If you take the atoms which built caraway seeds,
which is the spice they use in rye bread,
take a mirror image of them, suddenly you get something which tastes of spearmint.
Huh.
Is what's put on Wrigley spearmint gum. And in fact, there are some very dramatic examples of this, not just where the taste changes, but listeners might remember a story about the thalidomide drug.
In 1958, a West German pharmaceutical firm began marketing a new drug.
this is a news spot from the early
A
1960s.
sedative so effective and apparently harmless it quickly became one of the most widely used and prescribed drugs in West Europe, thalidomide.
Before long, pregnant women started taking it as a way to calm morning sickness, and most of us, well, we know what happened next.
Every woman
President Kennedy, in a press conference,
in this country, I think, must be aware that it's most important that they do not take this drug, that they turn it in. Every citizen, of course, should be aware of the hazards.
all in all, more than 12,000 children were born with arms and legs that were shortened or deformed or completely missing. The strange thing, according to Marcus, is that we now know that when they first made thalidomide, it was all one-handed. Let's say it was left-handed.
Yeah, and it did actually cure morning sickness.
And was completely harmless. But somewhere along the way, thalidomide flipped. We don't know whether this was in the drug-making process or after, but we do know
Its mirror image was incredibly poisonous.
So you know what this means, Jad?
What?
That in a show about symmetry, what we've just discovered is that life itself is actually deeply asymmetric.
Yeah.
Unlike love, where we started the program back with Aristophanes, when it comes to life, you don't want to meet the other half.
Stay away, mirror
run the
milk,
other
stay
way.
away. Anyhow.
That's, well, enough about mirrors.
No. I think we can take this another step further.
There's no further step
No,
to
there
take.
is. I mean, because something about this chemistry reflections thing resonates for me with the actual experience of standing in front of a mirror.
How?
Well, you look at that guy and you're like, oof. I mean, we talked about this on stage, actually, in D.C. at the Shakespeare Theater. Remember when I asked you that personal question?
Oh, yeah. Do we want to do that?
Oh, yes, we do. Psychologically, let me ask. Psychologically, do you enjoy looking in the mirror?
Is that a question you want to ask me in front of? That's a private question, I feel.
Surely you know, though, that the difference between your true self and your mirror self is not trivial.
What do you mean by my true self? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story now
Okay.
about a guy named John Walter.
Oh, with the little mustache from Baltimore from the movies.
No, that's John Waters. Walter. He's a computer programmer in New Rochelle. Paid him a visit recently. Because back when he was in college, he sort of kind of switched places with the guy in the mirror.
It was many years ago.
How old were you?
I was 19.
19.
So it was a long time ago.
We're talking late 70s here.
But I was had already had some issues with the mirror.
So let me set this up for you. The thing to know about John is that as a kid, he had a tough time, like so many of us. He would get bullied, beaten up on the playground. It was no better when he got into his teens, and as a 19-year-old, his social life consisted of a series of stinging humiliations like the following.
I remember at the time there was a lot of kids hanging out. There was a crew of people, 20, 30, 40 kids would gather together at the aqueduct, beautiful woods of the aqueduct, and go drink beers and smoke cigarettes, I walked into the group like, hey, what's up? And it's like, yeah, whatever. Roundly rejected.
And that, according to John, was
normal. That
was normal for you.
Very normal. Like people would say, what's that guy doing here? Ugh.
Maybe he was like wearing the wrong plaid pants or had like, mismatched socks. There might be some...
Whatever. Don't you empathize with this guy?
Nobody wants to be 19 and be the yucky person.
Exactly.
Of course I would empathize.
However, the story that will follow centers on a revelation that John had that began just as he was about to start his summer job.
For Con Ed, I was working for them.
As a painter.
And I had some pictures taken for Con Ed.
These were ID photos that you got?
Yeah, it was an ID camera that had 4 lenses. So when they took the negative, it was 4 of me. Boom, 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 boom.
Like little squares?
Little squares. And I remember looking over and going, why do I look so weird? Why do I look so weird?
Why do I look so weird?
Why do I look so weird?
Because here's the thing. I mean, the John in the pictures was not the John that he knew himself to be. That John was kind of timid.
Nerdy.
Not cool.
Why do I look so weird in pictures? I look fine.
What do you mean you look fine? How do you know you look fine?
Well, I thought I looked fine in the mirror. When I looked at myself.
Of course, in the mirror, things on the left go to the right, things on the right go to the left. Wait a second, that's when it hit him.
What hit him?
It's the hair part.
It's the what?
It's the hair part.
It's the what?
It's the hair part. I could do this all night. It's the hair part.
What does that mean? It's the hair. I hear it. I'm like, what does that mean? It's the hair part.
Well, in the picture, I saw a guy with a right hair part. In the mirror, I was seeing a guy with a left hair part.
Essentially, John.
Wait. So which side of my hair parted on?
You're left. You're left.
My left. Okay.
Now, John thought he was a lefty too. He would stand in front of the mirror, and the mirror would tell him he was parting it to the left. But in fact, he was parting it to the right in real life. Now, the lefty guy in the mirror, he liked that guy.
I was fine with that guy. He was cool. There was nothing wrong with him.
But he realized he was the only person seeing that guy. So he thought,
oh, let me put my hair on the other side.
Let me essentially swap real me for mirror me.
It was one of these things where, yeah, that looks really weird in the mirror, but I bet you it looks good in real life. Let me go find out.
So what did you do?
Well, that night...
He goes back to the aqueduct, same posse is there as before.
I mean, that same group, interesting enough, had beat the crap out of me like 3 years earlier when I was in like 9th grade.
But there he was now with his hair parted on the left. He says this time...
Things were different.
Somebody offered him a beer.
I was like, wow. But the thing that I knew made it better was when I left, I got goodbyes.
Come on. Look.
God, for the first time, I'm no.
This is ridiculous that you would tell me a story about a man who is having social failures universally, shifts his hair over, and is remade. This is like...
Look, it's his experience. It's very
Vidal
easy.
Sassoon
this is very
wouldn't,
easy to dismiss. But I'm going to win you over.
Easy.
Are you ready? I'm going to win you over.
You're not
ready for this? I don't think you're ready. Are you ready?
Are you asking me to be broad-minded?
Because I'm going to show you a picture right now.
All right.
Okay. Have a look at...
Okay.
Who is that?
It's Abraham Lincoln.
Our 16th president, Abraham
yes,
Lincoln. Now just stare at him, Robert. Take him in. Take him deep into your consciousness. By the way, this next part, you can see the pictures at RadioLab.org. It's worth checking out.
All right.
His eyes, his nose, his mouth. Pay attention particularly to the hair part. Okay? Now, look what happens when you flip Abraham.
Oh, that...
You see what happens there?
No. Is this the same picture?
It's the same picture.
Go back to the other picture. Go.
All right. There's Abe.
Now do the other one. Ooh,
you see?
That's so weird.
Now, here's the thing. This is what Abraham Lincoln would have seen when he looked in the mirror. He would have seen this guy, not the other guy, the one we all see.
Huh.
So there's something going on here. Would you not at least acknowledge me that?
I find this
something
vaguely
going
plausible,
on
yes.
Here. Okay? With your permission, Mr. Cynic, I will now rejoin John.
Who's about to what?
Get
married and have 3 babies because his hair...
He says after he switched his part...
It just kept getting better and better and better all summer long.
He was suddenly invited to all of these parties by the very same people that used to beat him up. And for the first time, he says...
I was clearly one of them.
Now, whether or not you buy that this is in fact because of his hair, that's on you, okay? But let's fast forward just a little bit.
The next summer...
This would have been 1979?
Yeah, 1979.
John's sitting in front of the TV and on comes...
Good evening. This is a special night for me.
The president.
Jimmy Carter.
Making a speech about how our nation is in a deep funk.
Why have we not been able to get together as a nation to resolve our serious energy problem.
The Malays speech, that infamous countries in Malays.
It's clear that the true problems of our nation are much deeper than gasoline lines or energy shortages, deeper even than inflation or recession.
Now, as you know, I'm sure you remember, a lot of people would criticize Jimmy Carter for making the speech because he's up there admitting flaws, and they were like, come on, Mr. President, don't be weak, man up! John, meanwhile, is sitting in front of the TV, and he's thinking,
dude, you gotta change your hair part. And so I wrote him.
You wrote to him?
I wrote to him.
Wait, so you said... Wait, well, why?
I think I just said, I think you should change your hair part on the left. I did myself and found it to be much more powerful, much more successful. And
do you have that letter?
I so wish I did.
Oh,
I don't have it. And then about 6 weeks later, boom, he switched.
He switched.
No, he didn't.
John wrote him a letter, and President Carter switched.
No.
Now, it might not have been John's letter that did
You
it.
have no evidence.
Think about how much, what's involved in a president switching his hair. There are focus groups, there are prayer meetings, there's so much thought that goes into it.
Did anyone actually record this?
Yes!
They did?
I will now read you a journalistic account from a periodical, well, there you go, Washington Post, right there. You see? Bam, right there.
Oh, man.
Newsweek, May 7th, 1979. At first, photographers thought they had their negatives reversed, but no. Jimmy Carter has changed the part in his hair from the right side to the left. The Washington press corps demanded an explanation.
But remember that, as opposed to John, who changes his hair and then all the girls give him beers, this guy, he was running against a luxuriantly haired man, Reagan, and it didn't matter.
Okay,
I mean, so he
fine,
just, he
fine,
got
he lost.
crushed.
All right, you know what? Forget
the
executive branch.
Yes.
Stay with me now.
Yes.
I was with John, and he was showing me pictures of congressmen and of celebrities, and I noticed something peeking out at the bottom of the pile. I see peeking out underneath the stack of photos as a Superman.
Yeah.
He showed me a picture of Superman looking mighty in his Superman suit. Notice how he parts his hair.
Yeah, it's a little bit on there, on that side, yeah.
Now,
this is Clark Kent with it on the right.
and as we know from the movies, Clark Kent is bumbling, he's sort of a dork.
I was, at first, really nervous about tonight.
So somebody who made that movie maybe explicitly, intuitively understood something about the difference, that maybe, the right part said one thing about Clark Kent, the left part said something about Superman. In fact, there is a scene in the movie where Clark Kent's running down an alley, he's about to turn into Superman, he pulls his shirt open to reveal the S, and literally mid-stride, his hair goes and turns from the right to the left. So
you're saying that sophisticated popular cultural motion picture manufacturers and at least 2 presidents have been persuaded to this position.
At this very moment, on a Saturday night, that is what I'm saying.
All right. Well, for argument's sake then, what would you say, I hate to get into this any deeper, explains the difference between putting the power of your hair on the left hand or the right hand?
Well, if you ask John, what he'll say is that the left hair part emphasizes strength and logic because it draws your attention to the logical, more masculine side of your face, your brain, because it's a left brain kind of thing. Where you can read more about anything you heard in this hour, you can see those amazing Lincoln pics and other things that we've got there on Symmetry. And of course, you can subscribe to our podcast.
Which means you get to hear the show, whenever you like.
I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
Thanks for listening.
RadioLab is produced by Jad Abumrad and Brenna Farrell.
Our staff includes Soren Wheeler, Ellen Horn, Tim Howard, Pat Walters, and Lynn Levy.
With help from Jessica Gross and Douglas Smith.
Special thanks to Uri Hassan, Sam Rudman, Abby Wendell,
Sean Carroll, Amy Pack, Joe Gal,
and Natasha Gostwick of StoryNori.com. Okay, hope I passed. Bye.
End of mailbox.